It's good to be with you guys tonight. Man, what a great turnout. This does my heart a lot of good, seeing a lot of folks wanting to do well by the kiddos in our community. You're setting aside some time tonight to stretch and to grow, and I hope to honor that. And hopefully by the end of the night tonight, you'll have a better idea of what this whole thing is about. This whole True Insight parenting strategies is really kind of a way of thinking and a different way of doing things than a lot of times we do when we're working with our kids. It's looking at having a greater sense of insight and awareness about ourselves and a greater sense of understanding about our kids and who they are and how they work. And so by the end of the night tonight, you're going to have a general idea of kind of what we're about and what it looks like and what we're going to go over the next 7 weeks together. And beyond that, by the end of the night tonight, you're going to know a little bit more about relationship styles. Tonight's group is really going to be focused on the ways that we do relationships and where that comes from, kind of how that starts from the moment that we're born, the first moments of life, up to right now, and everything that's happened today. All of that is shaping kind of how we do relationship and our general style of relating to kids. Because we bring a lot of who we are into our relationship with our kids. So the first several weeks, we're really going to take a good look at ourselves and what we bring to the equation here. Because to have a parenting relationship, you got to have a kiddo and someone doing the parenting. And sometimes we focus just on the kid part, but we're really going to look deeply into the grown-up part here. So I can kind of get a good idea of who we have here. Any folks here just from the school, from Monroe Middle School? Fantastic, welcome. How about people from just the community in general? Great. And how about Willakinsey folks? Awesome, good deal. How about children? Who is parenting kids like birth to 3? Fantastic. How about like 3 to 6? A lot of those. How about like elementary school parents, kind of 5 or 6 up through, 11, 10, 11. Middle school parents? Bless you. Yes. I can say that because I am one too. So high school parents of high schoolers? Okay. And people that just want to learn a little bit more about relationships in general? Yeah, it's everybody. Yeah, good. Fantastic. Well, awesome. So wherever you are in your parenting journey, I think we can kind of all agree that parenting is both like amazing and super, super fun, and also the thing that is like the most challenging thing in our worlds sometimes. And it's really both, and sometimes somewhere in the middle. But we can agree that there are some challenges to it. And I will stand before you not as a perfect parent, but as a person who has kind of done a lot of work around finding the people who are really good at this, finding who the experts are, and trying to do some work around this, and trying to grow a little bit as a parent and find out kind of who we are. And I think back to my first moments of parenting. And actually, I think back to the first years or so before I was a parent. And I think back to that as the time when I knew the most about parenting, right? I was an expert back then. I was like in graduate school and reading all these books, and I just kind of had my stuff down, and I knew what was up until those moments when my daughter came into the world, those first moments. And I remember that sense of fear as I was driving my daughter home from the hospital thinking, do they know that I really don't know anything? And they're still going to let me take this baby home and do this parenting thing, and it's choppy waters, for a while, and it's bliss as well. And you see the little one's eyes and their smile and those things that just make you light up. And then you're out of your depth, and then things happen that kind of make you want to pull your hair out sometimes. And so we look to the experts. What are kind of the basics? I want to go over a few of the basics of parenting that I found on the greatest parenting resource known to man, the internet. Here's a basic rule. Buckling up baby. It's the right and the wrong way to do it. Right? How about this one? Bonding with baby. Making baby smile. Some do's and some don'ts. Exercising your baby. Testing the baby's bottle. Hopefully you have all these down so far. If you don't, we can talk afterwards. But if you do, you're kind of here because you want to know beyond the basics. You want to know where do we go from here. So when we're looking at beyond the basics, we're going to cover some areas of kind of evidence-based practices, some research in the field of parenting that's just some of the most cutting-edge stuff that you're going to see. We're going to look a lot at the brain and the body and the nervous system, how we respond under stress, what our children's bodies and brains look like when they're responding under stress as well. All of that's kind of based on the work, mostly of Dan Siegel out of UCLA. He's written the book, The Whole Brain Child, that's listed here, and lots of others that are all listed in the website, the trueinsightparent.com website. All these resources are listed there as well. We're also going to look at kind of this idea of problem solving and how do we solve problems that come up with our kids in ways that build skills that our kids don't have yet, build relationship, build closeness between us and our kids, and also get some things going more smoothly in our homes. Things like setting rules and limits with our kids, but doing it in a way where we actually build relationship rather than feel just kind of at our wits' end at times. We're also going to look at some ways of incorporating intentional play times or intentional connection times with our kids, which is going to look different if you've got 0 to 3 elementary, middle, or high school kids. But there's some ideas and some principles around intentional connection times with our kids that we're going to spend at least a week talking about. And also some trust-based relational interventions from the work of Dr. Karen Purvis, who came up with the model that really looks at ways to build relationship in the middle of setting limits and boundaries with our kiddos. So those are some of the things that we're gonna look at. I wanted to give credit where credit is due. This isn't just a bunch of Corey's good ideas or even a bunch of Cafa's good ideas. We really did go to most of the experts in the field of parenting to present what we have for you folks. So this word, I want to put this word up on the screen. Does anyone have like an emotional reaction to this? Anyone feel something? Anyone have a word come to mind when this word's up here?
Weeding.
What's that?
Weeding.
Weeding. Okay, weeding was a discipline thing for you, huh? Great.
Spanking.
Spanking, okay. Anything else? Timeouts? Sure. So those are usually the things that people come up with. And I put this word up here because we do this little survey a lot of times as we're starting this off. And the thing that most people want to know about is this idea of discipline. How do we set limits? How do we correct? How do we guide? And usually our minds go into some form of punishment, consequences, correction. But if we look at this word, and as I look at this word a little more deeply, something else comes to mind for me. If you look at the root word of the word discipline.
Disciple.
Yeah, exactly. There it is. So this idea of discipleship comes up, which a disciple, you have like a master and you have someone that's learning from someone else. So discipleship is like, all those resources I just listed. I'm a disciple of those guys because they know what's up in terms of the science around parenting. And they have some knowledge, and I want to learn from them. I want to sit at their feet. I want to kind of learn what's up about parenting from someone who I see as an expert. So I kind of had this idea of what if we even kind of flip this idea of discipline with our kids into more of a flavor of discipleship? How do we do that? How do we kind of build that relationship where we're still guiding and we're still steering, but we have people who want to sit at our feet and want to learn from us? What we're looking at is how to build lifelong relationships with our kiddos. Not just right now, but build some plans and some ways to do relationship where they're going to learn now, but also take this with them for the rest of their life. So I look at people who do this discipleship thing really well, and they're good at two things. People who have lots of disciples, people who want to follow them, are really good at relationship. They're really, really good at building relationships with other people. And they're also really, really good at teaching. So what if our parenting, if we think about this word discipline not just as punishment, but what if we start to shift this idea of parenting and discipline into the realm of discipleship? What if it's more about teaching our children the things that they need to know? What if it's really about building strong relationships so that they trust us and they want to hear from us? So we kind of build this relationship with our kiddos. So we kind of have this foundational principle that we base most of the teachings, and we anchor a lot of the science around as the True Insight Parenting Strategies group. And it's this idea of parents don't exasperate your children by coming down hard on them, but take them by the hand and lead them in the way of the master. So what this means is, parents, it's up to us to create an environment that's not exasperating to our children, where they're able to learn from us and able to take correction and take instruction. And we get to do this through some gentleness and some kindness, through some teaching, sometimes through firmness as well. We have to take them by the hand, and sometimes we do need to lead them in ways that they're not going into. We want them to learn these masterful ways. And really, it's up to us, as our kids' grown-ups, to do this. We get this honor and this responsibility, and this is our kind of our anchor. So how do we do that? How do we do this discipleship parenting? How do we do this relationship building? Our main tool is the tool of insight. So exploring the world inside, looking at your internal world, and also looking at the internal world of the child. So we're going to take a lot of time looking at our worlds and their worlds. And as we do that, we're going to increase our awareness of self and our understanding of others to improve relationships with our children. So this statement right here is basically the essence of emotional intelligence. We're wanting to increase our emotional intelligence as parents, and we're also wanting to increase our children's emotional intelligence as well. Because the more awareness you have, the more skillful you can be, the more options you have, and the more it starts to feel like you've got some finesse and you've got some competence and some confidence in what you're doing with your kiddos. So it's still kind of in the philosophy part, what we're looking at through this idea of insightful parenting is building our parenting strategies on some pillars. So we want to think about discipleship. We want to think about guiding our children, leading them, but we also want to do that on these pillars of being parents who are exemplifying humility, generosity, and empathy. You know, there have been some studies done on what makes for good parenting, what makes for good relationships. And these were three of the top ones that really kept coming up over and over again in the research. And when we're talking about humility, Marsha Linehan, who's a great clinician, has this phrase that I love that I feel like speaks to the essence of humility. Her idea is that people are doing as well as they can, and we can always learn new skills. So we can all just kind of take a breath. We're all doing the best we can as parents right now, given our circumstances. We want to do well. It's preferable for us as human beings to do well. But there are some real reasons why we don't do well sometimes. The more awareness we have of that, the more humility we can come at that with and say, maybe I don't know everything, but I know some things. And I can be humble enough to learn some new things. So even you right now, sitting in this room on a Wednesday night, that's modeling humility. You're saying, hey, I can learn something new. And this is great for your kids to see, like, wow, my grown-ups, maybe they don't have it all together. Maybe we don't have to have it all together. But, what they're devoted to is getting better all of the time. So Ross Greene, who came up with the collaborative problem-solving model that we'll get into in a few weeks, has a pretty great phrase with that also. Kids do well if they can. So as much as we want to put that mercy upon ourselves, we're doing as good as we can, and we can learn new things. We want to extend that to our children and give them the benefit of the doubt that given their circumstances, given their level of skill, they're doing the best they can too. And they can always learn new things. And we get to be part of that process for them. Another quote around humility from Dr. Gary Landreth. He's the one who literally wrote the book on play therapy that we're going to talk about in some weeks to come. He has this great quote that I'll say a lot of times. The quote is, think about this as a parent. What's most important may not be what you do, but what you do after what you've done. That's humility. It's saying, you know what? There may be times where we blow it as parents. That may not be the most important thing. What may be most important is our humility after we blow it, where we can go and make repairs. We can own our mistakes, and we can make those repairs in our relationships with our kiddos. So the research, there's this great article that talked about the effects of humility, and it said that basically humble people set other people at ease. So when you exemplify humility, this sets other people, namely your children, at ease. If you want to set your children at ease, being humble is a good way to do it. Another is humble people are easier to be around. Surprise, surprise, right? Anyone had that person, that boss or that mentor who just was super humble, and you just want to be in their space? You just want to be around them? Think about that with our parenting. We want to be that for our kids. And also, people are more likely to receive instructions from people who are humble, just in general. So if we're wanting our children to receive instructions from us, well, humility is a great way to start that process with them. So the second pillar is generosity. This is about giving of self, time, and attention. Generosity promotes understanding and gratefulness in our kids. We want to be people who are generous, not just generous monetarily, but being generous with our time. Our time is important. Our time is often precious to us. So when you take time to spend time with your child, that's an act of generosity. That's a pillar on which you can build your relationship. So whether it's explaining to them something that they don't know, taking the time to help them fix a problem that's happening, or just sitting with them when they're having some really big feelings and they need to work through them, that is an act of generosity that you can do that will really just supercharge your parenting. And the last one is that idea of empathy. We want to build a lot of our parenting, our insightful parenting, around the pillar of empathy. Empathy is basically seeing the world through the eyes of another. Carl Rogers, the great clinician, came up with that idea of you see the world through someone else's eyes. You're not them. You are who you are, and they are who they are. But you try to see the inner world, the world of the other, through their eyes. So thinking about what it's like to be a kid, it's hard. Just the day-by-day, step-by-step growing up process is tough. Learning to make friends, learning how to have social skills, how to have manners, how to follow directions, how to clean a room, that stuff takes a lot of work, and it's harder for some kids than others. So getting into the eyes of your child and trying to see what's, those things that drive us crazy sometimes, being able to take a step back and say, gosh, I wonder what this is like on their side. I wonder what this feels like on their side of the issue here. So really starting to shape a lot of our interactions with our kids around humility. And we have some goals. It's good to measure. Does this stuff work? And hopefully, as we practice a lot of these things as parents, as we practice our insight, practice our humility, generosity, and empathy, practice parenting through discipleship, some things should start popping up. Things like we want kids who are respectful. These are our goals. Kind. We want perspective takers, kids who can see the perspective of other people. And you see how if you're modeling empathy, you're going to help them learn that skill. They're going to become perspective takers. They're going to see the world and the problems through other people's eyes by watching how you do it. We want kids who are less prone to peer pressure, who can think for themselves, kids who are leaders and not followers, who are willing to take a stand and not just follow the lead when the lead is going in bad directions. We want kids who are secure in themselves and who they are. Kids who think before acting. That's a tough one, right? There's some things we can do to help our kids learn how to do that better. kids who are aware of feelings, who are emotionally intelligent, kids who are confident, and able to understand their own brains and their bodies. Gosh, the research on what's happening just in our brains and our nervous system has advanced light years just in the last 10 to 15 years. So the things that we know now are things that a lot of us didn't know and were never taught when we were growing up. And a lot of this stuff is super useful. So think about the edge our kids will have if we start teaching them what's going on in their bodies when they're feeling frustrated, when they're feeling sad or angry or scared, and their heart starts to beat really fast, and their thinking's not very clear, and they've got a paradigm, they've got an understanding of what's this about, and how's this working, and what can I do to help get myself back under control. And we're going to learn that for ourselves too, which is a good thing. We want kids who can think for themselves, kids who are safe enough to relate. So sometimes things have happened that cause kids to feel a little bit unsafe in relationships. But we want, even if that's happened, there are things that can happen to help that heal and help that grow. We want kids who are better able to tolerate stress, who are emotionally intelligent. We also have some outcomes for parents. What I'm hoping for, even after tonight, but in the weeks to come, what I hope for is that you have some increased confidence. You feel like you got a game plan. You've got an idea, a go-to when tough stuff happens. So you're feeling a little bit more confident instead of winging it like even I do sometimes. All of us do. But if you've got a plan, you're less likely to wing it and more likely to feel confident that, hey, these are the steps that I need to do to get this thing solved. And we also want you to feel competent. Feel like you do have some more facts and some more knowledge and some really good research to back up the things that you do. So you feel competent in your parenting. You know what's up, and you've got an idea and a plan for what's to come next with your kiddos. And we also hope that the enjoyment of parenting increases. So going through these processes, learning these things, hopefully you'll feel like you enjoy your time with your kids even more. And if you already enjoy time with your kids, awesome. Hopefully that will still increase. And if things are really tough, hopefully that will improve as well. So each night, we're going to cover a lot of things, a lot of ideas, a lot of topics. And even if you walk away with just one idea, if you have one thing that you thought, I hadn't thought of it that way before. Or if you've got a skill or like a strategy to use with your kid, even just one thing will help you feel a little more confident, and hopefully help you enjoy your parenting a little more. So if you feel like there's a lot of it happening, don't worry about it. Just trust the process and trust that we'll build as we go week by week by week. If you have questions about the things that we're talking about, feel free to talk to me before or after class. Usually about 5 to 10 minutes before class, as things are kind of settling down, I'll start doing a little Q&A with folks. And I'll start looking for people who are using some of the strategies. So if you have a great story, something that, wow, I really tried this week. I really tried that empathy thing, and I was trying to see what my kid was thinking about and what was going on, and you have a great story, share it. That'd be a great time to talk about that. Also, after class, feel free to ask me questions. Also, we have kind of an email thread that goes throughout the class as well. If you'd like to be a part of that, and we've already got your email, great. And if you want to put it on the sign-up list, we can. That's also a great way if you want to email me questions throughout the week. We can certainly do that as well. So hopefully you kind of sit back and relax and just kind of be in the present here tonight and try to see if there's anything you can take with you in the week to come. All right. So over the next 7 weeks, we're going to cover 4 main areas. We're going to cover understanding yourself. We're going to do several weeks just on self-awareness. Then we're going to do several weeks on understanding others, like understanding your child. We're going to look at things like child development, brain development. We're going to look a little bit at the impacts of trauma on development. So you're going to get to know your kids really, really well. Then we're going to do a week on problem solving. So you're going to come away from this with a step-by-step model for how to fix problems with your kids. And then we're going to do some time around just play and connection, how to build intentional times of connection with your kiddos. So tonight, what we're going to start with is the idea of attachment styles. Under understanding yourself, this is the idea that we all do relationship a little bit differently. And that we all do relationship differently because of our past. So, but this is really where it all began. So your ideas about parenting didn't start when you were a parent. You know? Your ideas about parenting started when you were parented. You know, when you were the little one, when you were the child, that's when you started figuring out what this whole parenting thing was about. And sometimes we take things from those experiences that were really, really challenging and really difficult, and we decide, you know what, I'm not doing that. Other times we decide, you know what, this was really great for me, and this is something that I really want to impart to my children. But a lot of times we do things without a whole lot of awareness. We find ourselves talking in our father's voice or our mother's voice, and we're like, oh wow, where did that come from? Because a lot of that gets shaped without us really taking a whole lot of time to think about it. So Dan Siegel, that wrote The Whole Brain Child, he had a quote where he was talking about, one of the most important things you can do as a parent is take some time to think about your own attachment story. When you learned about relationships and how you learned about relationships. And he said it doesn't take a whole lot of money or therapy or anything to do that. Sometimes it's just really taking the time to sit and think about your story. Talk about your story with the people that you're close to. If you have a partner or spouse or friends or relatives or neighbors that you talk to about life, take some time thinking about this and discussing some of this. And we're going to kind of break it down a little bit further here into what happens in the past and what happens in the present. And I've got a little activity on your handouts there. This is called the Tree of Life activity. What this represents is that we all have roots on our tree of our self, of our person. So if our tree represents our self and our experience, our roots represent everything that's happened in our past. Everything that's happened from the moment you were born until now is down there in the roots of your tree. So I want you to take just a minute and think about any major events in your life that happened in your past that shaped who you are. So think about things like if you grew up with two parents or with a single parent, if your grandparents raised you, if your parents split up when you were 6, or if you had a coach during a time of childhood who really spent a lot of time saying that you were awesome and telling you great things about yourself, or if you excelled in music, or were an athlete, or were really good at academics, things that kind of shape who you are now. Just take just a couple of minutes and write down a few things about your own roots down in the box next to the roots of your tree there. All right. So why don't you go ahead and shift now, and what I'd like for you to do is on the box next to the leaves. What I'd like for you to do is write some things about who you are right now in your present. Things like what you do professionally. What are kind of your views on the world? What are your passions, your values? Do you have lots of friends? Do you have just a few friends? Do you have some really close friends, or do you kind of like to be on your own a little bit more? What do you do for your hobbies? What do you do for your free time? Do you even have free time? Or do you have too much free time? So as you're doing that, I would imagine you're probably seeing some connections. You may see some things that one way or another, from your roots, ended up into your branches and your leaves. It's kind of how it works a lot of times. Now the roots have a few interesting things about them. Number one, where are the roots? They're under the ground, right? They're things that we don't often look at. We don't usually pay attention to. They're things that happen in our past, and a lot of times we just kind of push that back down beneath the surface there. But taking some time to look at your roots can be super, super valuable. This kind of starts to make things click a little bit of, oh, this is why I tend to go to this emotion really quickly, or this is why I tend to deal with stress in this way, or this is kind of how I connect to other people. A lot of this has some connection with our roots. Now, the other interesting thing about roots is that you can't get rid of them. They are there. What's happened in the past has happened. You can't change it. However, you can always grow new roots. And again, even just sitting here in class tonight is an opportunity to grow some new roots. You're gaining some new insight, some new ways of thinking, some new ways of understanding, and eventually the new things that we learn in that humble process of learning, it trickles up into our roots, into our branches, and into our actions and our presence with our kiddos. So I'm going to kind of guide you through this one as well. This is another activity for you to do. We're going to take it just a little bit further than just, hey, this is my past. But I want to guide us through a few things that are pretty specific when we're thinking about our role as the parent and our relationships with our kids. So thinking some things like, and you can even give like a one-word answer on all of these is great. But if you want to write a sentence or whatever, or even just think about it, that's fine. But as I bring these up, kind of what's the first thing that comes to mind when I say things like, were feelings allowed in your household? What were feelings like in your household growing up? Were feelings really big and demonstrative? Were they really colorful? Were feelings really quiet and small? Or were they non-existent? Was it okay to cry in your household growing up? Or was it, if you cry, I'll give you something to cry about? That shapes some of the roots on our trees, sometimes either way. Or was crying all that you ever saw? It was just uncontrollable, lots of feelings and not a whole lot of regulation. How about communication? What was communication like in your household growing up? Was it really loud? Was it really soft? Was it very expressive, very not? What was communication like in your house growing up? And this is all on Activity 2. On page 3 in your workbook there. Communication, I told a story just a few nights ago to some of the folks that are even here, so you get to hear it twice. But communication in my household growing up was really loud. Very, very vocal. Came from a very expressive, very animated sort of family. And my wife came from a very, very quiet family. Very proper, very quiet. And she was an only child and an only grandchild on her side of the family. And I remember the first Thanksgiving we spent together as a couple. And we went to my wife's house. It was just so quiet. I felt a little bit nervous. It was a little unnerving. I wasn't used to that style of communication. It was very polite, very kind, but very, very quiet. Then she came to my crazy household for Thanksgiving dessert afterwards, and I think she got a little post-traumatic stress from it because everybody was just really loud and boisterous, and she just was not used to that. So things that we kind of took for granted, even about communication, kind of became our view of what felt normal. So we kind of had to decide as a couple, what's this going to look like for us? What do we take from our roots, and how do we shape that into what we're doing now? Things like touch. What was touch like in your household growing up? Was touch really healthy? Lots of hugs, a lot of pats on the heads? Or was touch something that was non-existent in your household? Was it something that only happened when it was in connected to discipline? Or was it something that happened just kind of on a day-to-day basis? Or was touch connected to abuse in your mind? So all of those things are important to pay attention to. Discipline style, what was it like? Was it might makes right? Was it kids should be seen and not heard? Or was it kind of you have free reign to do whatever you'd like? Or was it kind of somewhere in the middle? Was it we have a little bit of sharing power that happens? But just think about one word that kind of sums up. What was discipline like in your household growing up? And finally, were needs met for you growing up? And this one is super important because this really kind of forms the basis for the theory of attachment and attachment styles. which is basically the ways our needs are met shape how we do relationship. When you were reaching out for help, was there someone reaching back for you? When you were there with tears in your eyes because you skinned your knee, what happened next in that story? Did you know that there was always food in your cupboard? Did you know that there was going to be a house to go home to? Those physical needs and even those emotional needs. Were you somebody's darling? Were you special to somebody? Were you prized and valued by your caregivers? Those things shape how we do relationship. So we're going to watch a video here real quick that kind of gives a basis of how this whole attachment theory came about, and we'll introduce you to some of the styles of relationship that we'll kind of finish up with and go over afterwards. But look for some of these words in the video here, words like security, secure attachment, or insecure, avoidant or dismissive attachment, anxious attachment, fearful and disorganized attachment. So look for those. We'll watch this, and then we'll kind of do a little bit of recap.
Our deepest longing is to have stable, satisfying relationships, but the painful fact is that very large numbers of relationships have one painful episode after another, or seemingly intractable, miserable conflicts running through them. It's one of the biggest questions there is. Why is it so hard to be happy in love? The huge and not yet fully digested insight of psychoanalysis is that the challenges of relationships always start when we were children. It was the contribution of a great English psychoanalyst called John Bowlby to trace the tensions and conflicts we have with our partners back to our earliest experiences of maternal care. His ideas are sound in part because he drew so deeply and honestly on his own experiences in order to formulate them. Born in 1907, Bowlby had a quintessentially upper-class British childhood. Young Bowlby hardly saw his parents and was looked after by a nanny who was let go when he was just 4, leaving young Bowlby bereft. At 7, he was sent off, in line with the conventions of his class, to boarding school. He hated it and later declared, "I wouldn't send a dog away to boarding school at the age of 7. Bowlby became a brilliant medical student and an imaginative researcher. When he was a consultant to the World Health Organization in the early 1950s, Bowlby wrote a report, Maternal Care and Mental Health. He attacked prevalent assumptions and argued that kindness doesn't smother and spoil children. It's as if maternal care were as necessary for the proper development of personality as vitamin D for the proper development of bones, he wrote. This insight initiated a wave of reform. The visitation rules of many health institutions were reformed to allow parents to stay with their children, where they'd once been allowed only to visit and never touch. It sounds like a dry, bureaucratic move, but it ended countless afternoons of quiet sorrow and evenings of solitary anguish. In a book published in 1959 called Separation Anxiety, Bowlby looks at what happens when there isn't enough of this kind of parental care. He described the behavior of children he'd observed who'd been separated from assurance and get upset if it's not forthcoming. They become volatile, they take heart and then they despair, and then they're filled with hope again. This is the pattern of what Bowlby called anxious attachment. But the degree of separation from the parents may lead to another sort of problem. The child could feel so helpless, they become what Bowlby called detached. They enter their own world to protect themselves and become remote and cold. They experience what Bowlby calls avoidant attachment. That is, they see tenderness, closeness, emotional investment as always dangerous and to be shunned. They may in truth be desperate for a cuddle or for reassurance, but such things look far too treacherous. The focus of Bowlby's thinking was about what happens to a child if there are too many difficulties in forming secure attachments. But the consequences don't magically get restricted only to the age of 8 or 12 or 17. They're lifelong. Our attachment style is fed by our earliest experiences. It's a pre-existing script that gets written into our adult relationships, usually without us even realizing that this has happened. In line with Bowlby's views about how children relate to their parents, there are 3 basic kinds of attachment we can have to other adults. Firstly, secure attachment. This is the rare ideal. When you're securely attached, if there's a problem, you'll work it out. You're not appalled by the weakness of your partner. If your partner's a bit down, confused, or being a bit annoying, you don't react too wildly, because even if they can't be nice to you, you can take care of yourself and have hopefully a little time left over to meet some of the needs of your partner. You give the other the benefit of the doubt when interpreting behavior. You realize that maybe they had a tricky time at work. That's why they're not so interested in your day. The explanations are accommodating, generous, and usually more accurate. But there's another kind of attachment, anxious attachment, and this is marked by clinginess, texting and calling all the time just to check where the other is and keep tabs on what they're up to. You need to make sure the other person hasn't left you or the country. Anxiously attached people become coercive and demanding and focus on their own needs, not their partner's. Anxious attachment involves a lot of anger because the stakes feel so high. A minor slight, a hasty word, a tiny oversight can look to the anxiously attached person like huge threats. They seem to announce the imminent breakup of the whole relationship. One feels the reason you don't tell me that the minestrone soup I made is delicious is that you don't love me and are planning to leave me, when the true explanation may simply be that one's partner is mulling over a very tricky bit of news about a contract at work. Avoidant attachment means that you would rather withdraw and go away than compromise, get angry, or even just get close to another person. If there's a problem, you don't talk. Your instinct is to say you don't need the other person, especially if you're lonely. Avoidant spouses often team up with anxious ones. It's a risky combination. The avoidant one doesn't give the anxious one much support, and the anxious one is always invading the delicate privacy of the avoidant one. Bowlby helps us to feel more generous and more constructive about what these partners are doing when they upset or disappoint us. Almost no one in truth is purely anxious or purely avoidant. We're just a bit like that some of the time. So, alerted by Bowlby, we can see that a partner's apparent coldness and indifference is not caused by their loathing of us, but by the fact that a long time ago they were probably rather badly hurt by intimacy. And it opens possibilities of self-knowledge which can help one reform, if only a little, one's own rather eccentric behavior.
All right. Did you guys catch that? A lot of information, I know, but the general idea is that we all have styles of relating to other people, and those all come from somewhere. The things that have happened early in our lives shape how we feel and how we do relationship. Now, they also said in there that no one is purely one of those things. But we tend to go into one of those categories most of the time. And sometimes we go into that category more when we're under a lot of stress. So when we feel a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, sometimes we're doing just fine and secure until we feel slighted, until we feel disrespected or offended. And then that might put us in either our avoidant mode that says, well, I'm done with you, or it might put us into that anxious mode that says, well, let me just explain a little bit more. Just come back. Let me explain a little bit more, then you'll understand. So there's both of those things. And the bottom one, the last one of the fearful disorganized, is when you've had kind of some trauma happen and things haven't worked out so well for you. And sometimes you go close in a relationship, and then the closer you get, that starts to feel not so good. You start to feel anxious because the last time you got close, bad things happened. So you've learned that it doesn't feel good to be far away, and it also doesn't feel very good to get close. So there's this kind of back and forth that sometimes happen based on things that have happened. So this attachment theory, there's a wheel here that kind of explains how this works, and it starts with a felt need. So I'll give you an example of a baby, just hours old. Their very first felt need typically is what? Hunger, right? So before they even have words, before they're just minutes, hours old sometimes, they get this bad feeling here. And what do they do with that bad feeling? They cry. That is the very first expression of a felt need. If, when they express their need, they have someone there to take care of them and to feed them and soothe them, they have learned when I express my needs, someone's out there looking for me, and they make that bad feeling go away. And every time that happens, that builds security in the relationship. And you start to tell yourself something about who you are based on those experiences, right? I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm known, I'm cared for, I'm loved. And you start to tell yourself things about relationships. Relationships are predictable, they're soothing, they feel nurturing and kind, and you can count on them to be there every time that happens. And that felt need is going to change developmentally, right? It's going to go from I need food to I need toys, or I need play, or I need time with friends, or I need a new Xbox, or I need a new whatever it is. There's going to have these expressions of needs. And I'm not saying that a yes to all of those needs always has to happen. Your response to an expression of need sometimes is going to be yes, if it's reasonable. But sometimes your response to a felt need is going to be no, if it's something that's harmful or dangerous, or you got to set a limit. Even that teaches a child something about who they are. That sometimes my parents, when I express a need or even a want, they care enough to sometimes say no and sometimes say yes. What happens when we express a felt need and it's not met? A few things will happen. Sometimes if we learn that the only time we can get our needs met is if we say it over and over and over again, and we get louder and we get more clingy and we get more, because you're likely to get overlooked if you don't make a lot of noise. That's the basis of that anxious attachment. I've got to get your attention, and I'm going to do everything I can because it doesn't feel safe to not be heard and not be seen. And things have happened in your life to reinforce that. Now, other times you've reached out for other people and you got nothing. No help, no response. And you've learned who's going to look out for you but yourself. You've learned that relationship can let you down and it's not safe, so you don't go there. And then with the fearful and disorganized, sometimes you get the good stuff and sometimes you don't, and it's just really unpredictable and it's hard to make sense of. But that teaches you something about who you are and what relationships are like if those needs are not met. Also, relationships are unpredictable. You can't count on them. They can be hurtful. And something about self-worth comes from those experiences as well. So we've got this analogy to kind of help wrap our minds around this as well. If you think about every time that wheel happens, a child expresses a need, if they feel a need, they express it, and it's met by their caregiver one way or another. That's like a unit of security, like a marble. Think about it like one marble every time that happens. So you're walking around with a bag full of marbles, depending on how much of the time your needs have been met. So if your needs have been met a lot, you're walking around with a whole lot of security. You got a bag full of security, and that's what secure attachment looks like. Because you know that your needs are met, and you know that you can meet other people's needs. You're secure enough. You move towards self-assurance and relationships when times get hard. Because you believe that you've got 100 marbles of security in your bag to use, and that everyone else probably has about that many too. And if they don't have so many, they can borrow some of yours because you've got plenty to spare. And that's just kind of how you learn to walk in the world. Is you're secure enough to be okay with yourself. You can take care of yourself, but you're also secure enough to seek help from others. And you're also secure enough to give help when that's necessary. So our anxious folks, when times get hard, they tend to cling to others. So their belief is that they don't have any marbles because no one ever gave them any marbles. And they've learned that they have to get really loud and really clingy because everyone else has the marbles. And you're always chasing after other people's marbles because you feel like you don't have enough in your own bag. And you walk around with this kind of empty sack most of the time, thinking that other people are the ones that need to fill that sack for you. Now, our avoidant folks, they move away from relationship when under stress. They feel like they've got their own security, they've got their own marbles, but they worked for those themselves. They kind of met their own needs. And they don't necessarily want to let go of those marbles because they worked really hard for them. So you can imagine, an anxious person with 0 marbles in their bag, and an avoidant person with 100 marbles, but they don't want to give them up. That person's always reaching for the other person's marbles, and the other person's always kind of wanting that space. Then the fearful and disorganized folks, like I said, they'll move to and away from relationships. They feel like the marbles keep moving. They can't keep track. Sometimes they get marbles, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do bad stuff and they get good things from it. Sometimes they do good stuff and they get nothing. So it's very confusing sometimes to know how to do relationship. The good news is that our movement towards security can always grow. So regardless of where we started life, and regardless of even where we are right now, if you are in a trusting relationship with another human being or groups of human beings where you feel like you can reach out and with felt needs and really be heard and really be understood and really have those needs met, every time that happens, it's like getting an extra marble in your bag. You get more security every time you do that. So we're all moving more or less. We have the ability to move more towards security. And that idea of gaining security at some other point in life is called earned security. So I want you to take a second there and just think about, where do you feel like you are most of the time? Do any of those things sound like they make sense to you? Do you recognize that avoidance thing? Or does that anxious thing really ring true to you? Or do you feel kind of fearful, disorganized? Is that something? Or do you feel secure most of the time? And this can honestly look different depending on what kind of relationship it is. If it's a close, intimate relationship, you might have a lot of security, but with the folks at work, you might want a little bit more distance. And sometimes vice versa. Sometimes you feel a little bit more secure with the folks from work, and intimate relationships are a little bit more tough. So if this is like a little plot here, you're not going to be purely one of those, but you can put a little dot close to where you feel like you are kind of on that crossbar and think about where you are most of the time. And there's some good news with, earned security I think is great news, that we can always grow in our ability to relate to others. But I think another piece of really, really great news is the research on attachment and parenting says some really profound things. An article that came out just recently said that the best way to raise secure children is not necessarily that you're 100% secure yourself. They said the best way to raise securely attached children is to have a deep understanding of your attachment style. So if you have awareness that sometimes I can be a little distant, or if you have awareness that, wow, sometimes I get really clingy, and you can recognize that when that's happened, and kind of step over that for the sake of the needs of your child, to meet their needs, that's the best possible scenario for raising secure kids. So you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to be perfectly secure, and really none of us are. But having some ideas of where you tend to go, especially when you get stressed. When your kids are pushing your buttons, which of those do you go to? So we're going to do a little exercise here to kind of end up our time. And this is kind of just a little thought experiment that we're going to work on together, thinking about how to recognize attachment styles in parents. What does this stuff look like? And I have this idea of dropping the kids off. Now, earlier this in the summer, we did this activity thinking about parents dropping kids off for summer camp because it was like really relevant right then. But right now, I feel like a better thought experiment is thinking about watching parents drop their kids off for the first day of school. All right? This is a great moment to recognize what attachment looks like. And you might think about, what was that experience like for you when you were dropping your kids off for preschool or for school or even for daycare. So if we think about our parents, our secure parent here, they're pretty present in themselves. They feel like their needs are met. They can meet the needs of others. They can give and receive help. So this is the parent Think about them they're driving, they park, and maybe they're walking their kid up to the front of the school, and their child sees one of their really, really good friends from last year. The child runs across the sidewalk, goes and gives the other kiddo a great big hug. What's the secure parent feeling right then? Yeah, pretty safe, pretty normal. It's like they might even feel a little pride, like, hey, how cool. My kiddo went and they saw their friend, because that's how you see the world. I'm secure. There's no offense here, right? They just feel like this is what kids do. This is what you do. You go towards relationship. Now, let's say on the way to give that kid a hug, their kiddo falls and skins their knee. What's a secure parent going to do? Yeah, they're going to comfort them. They're going to go and they're maybe kind of help them get cleaned up. They're going to be able to give help. Now, if their kid says, hey, I don't need this, what's a secure parent going to do? Sure, okay, good. You're good. Okay, you're a big kid. You can handle this. But if you need help, I'm over here. I got some Band-Aids in the car. You know where I am if you need me. So they might give some space for the kid to go towards relationship. They might give some comfort if comfort is needed. But if comfort's rejected, they're not going to necessarily take it personally. And they're not going to leave. They're going to let the kid know that they're here if they need help, but they're also going to possibly give some space. So that's what a secure parent is going to look like on the first day of school. Make sense? Okay, so our avoidant or dismissive parent. So parents with this attachment style, they have a tendency to overly interpret children as independent. Children may want to connect, but an avoidant parent may keep a little bit more distance from the child. Children may need the parent, but because independence is what we would want, we might treat our kids with that. So the avoidant parent on the first day of school, they might slow down the car enough to let the child jump out to get to class, because they want to get as much distance as quickly as possible, because that's what they would want, right? They don't want some parent figure attaching to them, cramping their style. And when they see the kiddo run to their friends, that parent is thinking, awesome, that's what they need. Go to your friends. I'm off to get coffee, right? Go do your thing. I'll go do my thing. So let's say they see the child maybe in the rearview mirror as they're leaving for coffee. The kid falls on the way to meet up with a friend, skins their knee. What is an avoidant or dismissive parent going to do? What's that? Yeah, maybe drive off. They're definitely not going to go and help necessarily, because they would see that as an intrusion, right? If you have a lot of dismissive tendencies, you feel like, I take care of myself. And if I fell down, I'd want to take care of myself. I don't want a parent coming in cramping my style. Now, what the child may need desperately at that point is a parent to step over that avoidance and come take care of them. See, this is how that awareness of the attachment styles is so powerful. If you can recognize, aha, I'm doing that avoidance thing right now, and what my kiddo really needs is for me to step over my avoidance and help meet the need that they have right then and there. All right. Our anxious attached parents. If anxiety and anxious describes the style of parenting, this is, the helicopter parent, the constantly hovering. They have a tendency to be overly clingy, hovering, worried with our children. They might misinterpret a child's natural expression of independence as personal attacks or not liking a parent. They may insert themselves into the child's play unnecessarily. So this parent is probably going to get to school, maybe an hour early to get a really, really good parking spot so they don't have to walk very far in traffic to get to the front door. And they're probably going to be right there connected with the kiddo the whole time, walk with them, maybe stay the first class period just to meet the teacher and make sure everything's on the up and up, and make sure you got all the emails and the connections and if they even let their kid go to school, right? Because with that attachment style, sometimes there's a need to just really, really cling and get super close. If they see their child run from their clenched hand, break free, and go over and hug that really, really good friend from last year, what's the anxious parent thinking? How dare they, right? Don't they know the trouble I went to? They might go yank them back. They might take offense. They might feel like, wow, they don't love me. They don't need me anymore, right? It can kind of get emotional sometimes. And here again is where it can become really powerful to know your attachment style, to know, boy, I'm doing that anxious thing right now. Not that it's bad. None of those are bad. It's just kind of the way we've learned to do life, the way we've learned to do relationship. And if you can recognize, oh, I'm doing that anxious thing right now, and maybe what my kid needs is a little bit of space to go and be with their friends and do that kind of normal thing, we step over our anxious attachment to let our kids have a little bit more space. Lacking the awareness of any of these styles is what a lot of times leads to a lot of the conflicts that we have with our kiddos. So our disorganized parents, this is parents who often maybe have unresolved or kind of existing trauma that's going on for them, attachment difficulties from our past, and sometimes our kids trigger our own stuff. So this is when our own trauma gets triggered because of natural and normal things that happen with our kids. If our kids raise their voices or shout or hit or things, sometimes it can put us back into that space of trauma, and we can react to our child as if they were the object or the perpetrator of the trauma that happened to us. This can be really difficult. This sometimes will pull us out of the present moment with our kids. So doing some good self-work around this can be really, really important, especially if you've got some trauma. If you've had some abuse or even some just relational trauma where you've had relationships that maybe weren't the healthiest in your life. Getting to know that will help you stay more present with your kiddo. Because if a fearful, disorganized parent is dropping their kid off from school and all of a sudden something triggers a memory or a feeling, they might lack the presence that their kids need with them in that moment to help walk them into the building. So just being aware that we're all one of these things, more or less, most of the time, and a lot of them other times as well. So what do we do? What do we do about this? First of all, what I would recommend is spend some time with people who contribute to your own sense of security. This could be spouse, friends, coworkers, spiritual groups, extended family members. Spend time with people who are meeting your physical, emotional, relational needs. People who give back to you. That's going to help you increase your sense of personal security. So take some time to do that. Think about who are your people. Who are your people that you go to when you need security? Because the more security you have personally, the more you're going to be able to extend to your kiddos. Second of all, I want you to think about your motivation for parenting. Don't lose sight of your goals and your dreams. What are you hoping for your kids? Why are you doing this whole parenting thing at all? Keep in mind, sometimes it's easy to lose track of this in the day in, day out struggles of parenting. So take some time to really reflect. What am I doing here? What am I doing with my kiddos? What do I want them to look like when they're older? What do I want our family relationship to look like right now? How do I shape this in the best way possible? So do some dreaming, do some aspirations. I usually mention here too, if you're doing like adoptive families or foster parenting, think about your motivation for that as well. And it, in best case scenario, is not about meeting a need for you, but meeting a need for a child who needs a safe home, and needs a place to live. And the cool thing is that you are building new attachment stories for your children right now, all the time. You're writing the script for what they view relationship to be like. A little scary, huh? We got a lot of power, but a lot of opportunity. So keeping that in mind, we're writing the scripts for our children in the way they do relationship. So even just having some general understanding of these are kind of the styles of the way most people relate is going to give you an edge. You're going to have maybe more than your parents had for you going into this and thinking about how you do that. So I have a quote from my boss over at Cafa. I love this one. So Carolyn said this in a training one time and just wrote it down because I think it's so profound. She says, the degree to which you may experience success in parenting is in direct correlation to your ability not to be offended. So learning to not take offense from the things that our kids do. And this is where security really comes into the picture here. If our kids don't want us to play with them in that moment because they want to do something independently, if we can not take offense to that and say, okay, I'm secure enough in myself and I'm secure enough to know that this is kind of normal for them to do this sometimes, we're going to do better, right? Or if we're instead, if we feel offended by something really rude that our kids do, and we say, nobody does that to me, and we get a little dismissive or a little avoidant with our kids, as opposed to saying, wow, they're doing the best they can, I'm doing the best I can. They're not doing so well right now, but you know what? We can always learn new things. We can always get better at the things that we do. So having that ability to be unoffendable as a parent is kind of what we're shooting for. So think about the ways your attachment style impacts how you relate to your children, partners, friends, coworkers. Think about this week. Do you recognize yourself being more secure or less secure with certain people in your life? Can you recognize some dismissiveness in the way you interact with certain people? Can you recognize maybe some anxiety, some anxiousness? I really want this person's attention, and I do a lot of things to get that. Do some self-reflection on this week. Think about that. Be curious. So there's a homework activity on that on page 4, where I'd encourage you to do some journaling, do some thinking about that this week. And another tip I give is to look at yourself in a different way. Instead of either I'm the best or the worst parent, think about it. I'm doing the best I can, given my own attachment story, my own history, my own roots. My leaves look a certain way. I'm doing the best I can. I may be missing some skills. This is where our humility comes up, right? It's okay. Maybe we didn't learn how to be very secure. There may be some really good reasons why you're missing certain skills and how to relate to other people. That's okay. And kind of embracing that and figuring out what it is can be super helpful. So we're all missing certain skills, but we can always learn new skills. We're doing as well as we can. We're missing some skills, but we can learn new ways even to contribute to our own security, right? And that ability to hopefully translate that into our children's security. So, I hope this was helpful tonight. Feel free to stick around and ask some questions. I want to encourage you, there is, if there's anything that you would like to dig into deeper, the website, trueinsightparent.com. Every video I ever show up here will always be posted on the week-by-week videos on the website. There are more resources. If you want to learn more about attachment styles, there's some books and some websites and some resources that are also there on the website. So, and if you want to ask a question, you can do that through the website as well. So take a look at that over this week. Next week, we're going to really dig into kind of the neurobiology of parenting. So looking at the brain, the body, the nervous system, that funky stuff we do when we're feeling a little stressed out, or a little anxious, a little worried, a little scared. and have some tools to be able to kind of regulate ourselves better so we can do better kind of by our kiddos. So, man, thanks so much for being here, and I hope you take this with you and try some of this stuff out this week. See how it goes, and I'd love to hear your stories next week as you come back and you notice some of this attachment stuff playing out in your life. So have a great night, and we'll hope to see you next week.